Imagine giving everything to a job you love, only to be fired for speaking out about the racism you've faced in silence for years. Now, what if your fight didn't just change your fate, but forced an entire company to confront its deepest biases and overhaul its culture? This isn't just a story about one woman's battle. It's about how one voice can challenge systemic racism and spark a revolution for justice in the workplace. Maya Thompson had always believed in fairness. As a human resources specialist at a well-known tech startup in downtown New York, she spent her days navigating the complex world of employee relations. The office was sleek and modern, with glass-walled conference rooms and open desks where colleagues collaborated. At least, that's what the company liked to claim. But as Maya would soon find out, the company's commitment to diversity was only skin-deep. It started small, subtle comments that stung more than they should. The way people hesitated before addressing her, the way her suggestions were often ignored in meetings. The little things that most people would brush off. But Maya wasn't most people. She was a woman of principle, and she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And then, there was the microaggression from Brian Sinclair, the senior executive, the one everyone admired for his vision and leadership. "Good idea, Maya," he said, nodding at a suggestion she had made during a meeting. "I'll take it from here. Let me know if you have any other thoughts. Maybe after we hear what the others think." She could feel her cheeks burn. It wasn't the first time he dismissed her contributions. But this time, she couldn't ignore it. Something snapped. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everyone who had quietly suffered in the shadows, afraid to speak up. Maya made a decision that day. She would no longer stay silent. She was going to file a formal complaint about the discrimination she had been facing. It wasn't just for her. It was for every Black employee who had been overlooked, dismissed, or belittled. She wasn't going to let the company pretend that everything was fine while it was all falling apart under the surface. Maya had hoped for support. After all, the company had a whole diversity and inclusion program. They even had posters on the walls talking about equality, respect, and opportunity for all. But when she went to HR with her complaint, she was met with silence. A week later, she received an email from her manager. "Maya, we've decided to part ways. Your performance hasn't been meeting expectations." Her stomach sank. She hadn't expected this. Retaliation? It was a word she had heard tossed around in HR training, but never thought she would experience firsthand. It was clear. Speaking up had cost her. She couldn't understand it. How could the company fire her for complaining about the very thing they claimed to stand against? Brian's voice echoed in her head. "We can't have this kind of disruption in our workplace, Maya. It affects productivity." His words weren't a shock. She had seen this before, watched it happen to others. But hearing it now, aimed at her, hit differently. Maya knew she wasn't just fighting for her job. She was fighting for something bigger, something that could change the way the company operated, something that could force them to face their own hypocrisy. But that didn't make the situation any easier to stomach. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Taking legal action would cost her everything: her reputation, her savings, her emotional energy. But what else could she do? She couldn't walk away. Not when so many people were depending on someone to stand up. Maya hired a lawyer, a no-nonsense attorney named Sarah, who had a reputation for taking on big corporations and winning. Sarah believed Maya's case had merit. It wasn't just about retaliation for filing a complaint. It was about exposing a systemic problem within the company. And Maya wasn't alone. As they dug deeper, more employees came forward with stories of their own experiences, each one confirming that the company's diversity policies were nothing more than window dressing. Maya's heart raced as the first court date approached. She could almost feel the eyes of her former colleagues on her, waiting to see how this would unfold. Would they support her, or Would they keep quiet? And would the company's leaders, especially Brian, finally be held accountable for their actions? The tension in the courtroom was thick. The defense painted Maya as an employee who couldn't handle the pressure, who wasn't a team player. But Maya's lawyer was relentless, presenting evidence, testimonies from other employees, and pointing out how the company had failed to follow its own diversity policies. Maya stayed calm, even when Brian took the stand and smirked as he explained how unfortunate it was that Maya had taken things so personally. He acted like he didn't even understand the gravity of the situation. But Maya wasn't there to change his mind. She was there to make sure the company never got away with it again. The trial was long, but Maya's determination never wavered. Then one day, the judge made a decision that sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Maya had won. It wasn't just a small victory. The company was ordered to pay a substantial settlement, but more importantly, they were mandated to overhaul their entire diversity program. The leadership team, including Brian, would be required to undergo sensitivity training. The company would have to publicly acknowledge its failure to foster a truly inclusive environment. Maya walked out of that courtroom with a sense of triumph she hadn't expected. She had done it, not just for herself, but for the people who had felt powerless for far too long. She had forced the company to confront its own ugliness, and in doing so, she had changed the narrative. The company was shaken to its core. In the months that followed, there were countless meetings, apologies, and promises of change. But the real transformation came when employees began to see the difference in how they were treated. Conversations about race, diversity, and inclusion that had once been swept under the rug were now happening openly, without fear of retribution. Maya didn't stay at the company after the trial. She was offered a severance package, and while she was grateful, she knew her time there was done. But her legal victory had left a lasting impact, both within the company and in the industry at large. She went on to become a consultant for other organizations, helping them navigate the complex terrain of diversity and inclusion. She had proved that standing up to prejudice could change the system, not just for one person but for an entire community. Maya's victory was just the beginning. As companies across the city, and eventually the country, scrambled to improve their diversity programs, she became a sought-after voice in the conversation. But she never forgot the faces of the people who had stood by her, the quiet warriors who had lent their voices to the cause. She had learned that change doesn't come easily, and it doesn't come quickly. But it does come if you're willing to fight for it. And sometimes, that fight changes more than just the company, it changes the world. Have you ever faced discrimination in your workplace or society? What changes would you like to see in the systems around you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel for soul-stirring stories.